Hello and welcome to day 7 of A Year with Aquinas. If you've made it this far, props for sticking to it for 1 week. 51 more to go, where we are going to finish the Summa Theologica and just these 51 upcoming weeks. We are continuing today in the first part, question 11. You can follow along with me on newadvent.org/summa. Question 11. The unity of God. Article 2. Whether one and many are opposed to each other. Objection 1. It seems that one and many are not mutually opposed, for no opposite thing is predicated of its opposite, but every multitude is in a certain way one, as appears from the preceding article. Therefore, one is not opposite to multitude. Reply to objection 1. No privation entirely takes away the being of a thing, inasmuch as privation means negation in the subject, according to the philosopher. Nevertheless, privation takes away some being, and in so being, by reason of its universality, the privation of being has its foundation in being, which is not the case in privation of special forms, as of sight or of whiteness and the like. And what applies to being applies to one and to good, which are convertible with being. For the privation of good is founded in the some good. Likewise, the removal of unity is founded in some one thing. Hence, it happens that multitude is some one thing, and evil is some good thing, and some non-being is some kind of being. Nevertheless, opposite is not predicated of opposite, forasmuch as one is absolute and the other is relative. For what is relative being as potentiality is non-being absolutely, i.e., actually, or what is absolute being in the genus of substance is not being relative as regards to some accidental being. In the same way, what is relatively good is absolutely bad, or vice versa. Likewise, what is absolutely one is relatively many, and vice versa. Objection 2. Further, no opposite thing is constituted by its opposite, but multitude is constituted by one. Therefore, it is not opposed to multitude. Reply to objection 2. A whole is twofold. In one sense, it's homogeneous, composed of like parts. In another, it is heterogeneous, composed of dissimilar parts. Now, in every homogeneous whole, the whole is made up of parts having the form of the whole, as, for instance, every part of water is water, and as such the constitution of a continuous thing is made up of its parts. In every heterogeneous whole, however, every part is wanting in the form belonging to the whole, as, for instance, no part of a house is a house, nor is any part of a man a man. Now, a multitude is such a kind of whole. Therefore, inasmuch as its part has not the form of the multitude, the latter is composed of unities, as a house is composed of not houses. Not, indeed, as if unities constituted multitude, so far as they are undivided, in which way they are opposed to multitude, but so far as they have being, as also the parts of a house make up the house, by the fact that they are beings, not by the fact that they are not houses. Objection 3. Further, one is opposed to one, but the idea of few is opposed to many. Therefore, one is not opposed to many. Reply to objection 3. Many is taken in two ways. Absolutely, and in the sense that it is opposed to one, and another way as importing some kind of excess, in which it seems to oppose to a few. Hence, in the first sense, two are many, but not in the second sense. Objection 4. Further, if one is opposed to multitude, it is opposed as the undivided is to the divided, and is thus opposite as to privation is to habit. But this appears to be incongruous because it would follow that one comes after multitude and is defined by it, whereas, on the contrary, multitude is defined by one. Hence, there would be a vicious circle in definition, which is inadmissible. Therefore, one and many are not opposed. Reply to objection 4. One is opposed to many privately, inasmuch as the idea of many involves division. Hence, division must be prior to unity, not absolutely in itself, but according to our way of apprehension. For we apprehend simple things by compound things, and hence we define a point to be, quote, what has no part, end quote, or the beginning of a line. Multitude, also, an idea, follows on one, because we do not understand divided things to convey the idea of multitude, except by the fact that we attribute unity to every part. Hence, one is placed in the definition of multitude, but multitude is not placed in the definition of one. But division comes to be understood from the very negation of being, so that what comes to mind is being. Secondly, that this being is not that being, and thus we apprehend division as consequence. Thirdly, comes to the notion of one. Fourthly, the notion of multitude. On the contrary, things which are opposed in idea are themselves opposed to each other. But the idea of one consists in indivisibility. But the idea of multitude contains division. Therefore, one and multitude are opposed to each other. I answer that one is opposed to many in various ways. The one, which is the principle of numbers, is opposed to the multitude, which is number, as the measure is to the thing measured. For one implies the idea of a primary measure, and number is multitude, measured by one, as is clear from metaphysics. But the one, which is convertible with being, is opposed to multitude by way of privation, as the undivided is to the thing divided. Article 3. Whether God is one. Objection 1. It would seem that God is not one, for it is written, "For there be many gods and many lords." 1 Corinthians 8:5. Reply to objection 1. Gods are called by many the heir of some who worshipped many deities, thinking as they did that the planets and other stars were gods. There are also the separate parts of the world, Hence, the apostle adds, quote, "Our God is one," end quote, etc. Objection 2. Further, one, as the principle of number, cannot be predicated of God, since quantity is not predicated of God. Likewise, neither can one, which is convertible with being, be predicated of God, because it imparts privation, and every privation is imperfect. Therefore, we cannot apply to God. Therefore, God is not one. Reply to objection 2. One, which is the principle of numbers, is not predicated of God, but only of material things. For one is the principal number belongs to the genus of mathematics, which are material in being, and abstract from matter, only an idea. But one which is convertible with being is a metaphysical entity, and does not depend on matter in its being. Although in God there is no privation, still, according to the mode of our apprehension, he is known to us by way only of privation and remotion. Thus, there is no reason why a certain kind of privation should not be predicated of God. For instance, that he is incorporeal and infinite. And in the same way, it is said of God that he is one. On the contrary, it is written, quote, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one." End quote. Deuteronomy 6:4. I answer that it can be shown from these three sources that God is one. First, from a simplicity. For it is manifest that the reason why any singular thing is this particular thing is because it cannot be communicated to many, since that whereby Socrates is a man can be communicated to many, whereas what makes him this particular man is only communicable to one. Therefore, if Socrates were a man, by what makes him to be this particular man, as there cannot be many Socrateses. So there could not be, in that way, many men. Now, this belongs to God alone, for God himself is his own nature, as was shown above. Therefore, in the same very way, God is God, and he is this God. Impossible it is for there to be many God. Impossible it is therefore that many gods should exist. Secondly, this is proof from infinity of his perfection. For this was shown above that God comprehends in himself the whole perfection of being. If many gods existed, they would necessarily differ from each other. Something, therefore, would belong to one which did not belong to another. And if this were of a perfection, one of them would not be absolutely perfect. But if a perfection, one of them would be without it. So, it is impossible for many gods to exist. Hence, also the ancient philosophers constrained it, as it were, by truth, when they asserted an infinite principle, asserted likewise that there is only one such principle. Thirdly, this was shown from the unity of the world. For all things that exist are seen to be ordered to each other, since some serve others. But things that are diverse do not harmonize in the same order unless they are ordered thereto by one. For many are reduced to one order by one better than many, because one is the per se cause of another, and many are the accidental cause of one, inasmuch as they are in some way one. Since therefore what is first is most perfect, and is so per se, not accidentally, it must be that the first which reduces all into one order should be the only one, and this is God. Article 4. Whether God is supremely one. Objection 1. It seems that God is not supremely one. For one is so called from the privation of division, but privation cannot be greater or less. Therefore God is not more one than other things which are also called one. Reply to objection 1. Although privation considered in itself is not suspective of more or less, still according as its opposite is subject to more or less, privation can also be considered in itself in the light of more and less. Therefore, according as the thing is more divided, or is divisible, either less or not at all, in that degree it is called more or less, or supremely one. Objection 2. Further, nothing seems to be more indivisible than what is actually and potentially indivisible, such as a point in unity. But a thing is said to be more one according as its indivisibility. Therefore, God is not more one than unity is one and a point is one. Reply to objection 2. A point and unity, which is the principle of number, are not supremely being, inasmuch as they have being only in some subject. Hence, neither of them can be supremely one. For as a subject cannot be supremely one, because of the difference within its accidents and subject, so neither can an accident. Objection 3. Further, what is essentially good is supremely good. Therefore, what is essentially one is supremely one. But everything is essentially one, as the philosopher says. Therefore, every being is supremely one, and therefore God is not one more than any other being is one. Reply to objection 3. Although every being is one by its substance, every such substance is not equally the cause of unity, for the substance of some things is compound and of others simple. On the contrary, Bernard says, quote, all things can be called one. The unity of the divine Trinity, holds the first place. Well, let me say that again. Among all things called one, the unity of the divine Trinity holds first place. End quote. I answer that, since one is an undivided being, if anything is supremely one, it must be supremely being, and supremely undivided. Now, both of these belong to God, for he is supremely being, inasmuch as his being is not determined by any nature to which it is adjoined, since he is being itself, subsequently, absolutely, and undetermined. But he is supremely undivided, inasmuch as he is divided neither actually nor potentially by any mode of division, since he is altogether simple, as was shown above. Hence, it is manifest that God is one in supreme degree. Question 12. How God is known by us. Article 1. Whether any created intellect can see the essence of God. Objection 1. It seems that no created intellect can see the essence of God, for Chrysostom says, commenting on John 1:18, quote, no man hath seen God at any time, end quote, says, quote, not prophets only, but neither angels nor archangels have seen God. For how can a creature see what is increatable? End quote. Dionysius says, speaking of God, quote, neither is there sense, nor imagine, or image, nor opinion, nor reason, nor knowledge of him. End quote. Reply to objection 1. Both of these authorities speak of the vision of comprehension. Hence, Dionysius' premise immediately before the words cited, quote, he is universally to all incomprehensible, end quote, etc. Chrysostom likewise, after these words, says, quote, he says of this most certain vision of the Father, which is such a perfect consideration and comprehension as the Father has the Son. End quote. Objection 2. Further, everything infinite, as such, is unknown, but God is unknown, as was shown above. Therefore, in himself, he is unknown. Reply to objection 2. The infinity of matter, not made by perfect form, is unknown in itself, because all knowledge comes by form, whereas the infinity of a form not limited by matter is in itself supremely known. God is infinite in this way, and not in the first way, as appears from what was said above. Objection 3. Further, the created intellect knows only existing things, for what falls first under apprehension of the intellect is being. Now, God is not something existing, but rather he is super existence, as Dionysius says. Therefore, God is not intelligible, but above all intellect. Reply to objection 3. God is not said to be existing as if he did not exist at all, but because he exists above all that exists, inasmuch as he is known in his own existence. Hence, it does not follow that he cannot be known at all, but that he exceeds every kind of knowledge, which means that he is not comprehended. Objection 4. Further, there must be some proportion between the knower and the known, since the known is the perfection of the knower, but no proportion exists between created intellect and God, for there is an infinite distance between them. Therefore, the created intellect cannot see the essence of God. Reply to objection 4. Proportion is twofold. In one sense, it means a certain relation of one quantity to another, according as the double, treble, and equal species of proportion. In another sense, every relation of one thing is another called is to another. In another sense, every relation of one thing to another is called proportion. And in this sense, there can be a proportion of a creature to God, inasmuch as it is related to him as the effect of its cause, and as potentiality is to its act. And in this way, the created intellect can be proportioned to no God. On the contrary, it is written, quote, we shall see him as he is, end quote. 1 John 3:2. I answer that, since everything is knowable according as it actually is, God, who is pure act, without any admixture of potentiality, is in himself supremely knowable. But what is supremely knowable in itself may not be knowable to a particular intellect on account of the excess of the intelligible object above the intellect. As, for example, the sun, which is supremely visible, cannot be seen by the bat by reason of its excess light. Therefore, some who consider this held that no created intellect can see the essence of God. This opinion, however, is not tenable. For as the ultimate beatitude of man consists in the use of the highest function, which is the operation of his intellect, if we suppose that the created intellect can never see God, it would either never it would neither it would either never attain this beatitude, or its beatitude would consist in something else besides God, which is opposed to faith. For the ultimate perfection of this rational creature is to be found in that which is the principle of its being, since a thing is perfect so far as it attains to its principle. Further, the same opinion is also against reason, for there resides in every man a natural desire to know the cause of any effect which he sees, and thence arise wonder in a men. But if the intellect of the rational creature could not reach so far as the first cause of things, the natural desire would remain void. Hence, it must be absolutely granted that the blessed see the essence of God. Article 2. Whether the essence of God is seen by the created intellect through an image. Objection 1. It seems that the essence of God is seen through an image by the created intellect. For it is written, quote, "We know that when he shall appear, we shall be like to him, and because we shall see him as he is." End quote. John 1:3-2. Reply to objection 1. That authority speaks of the similitude by which is caused by participation of the light of the glory. Objection 2. Further, Augustine says, quote, "When we know God, some likeness of him is made in us." End quote. Reply to objection 2. Augustine speaks of the knowledge of God here on earth. Objection 3. Further, the intellect, an act, is an actual intelligible, as let me try again. Further, the intellect, an act, is the actual intelligible, as sense, an act, is the actual sensible. But this comes about inasmuch as sense is informed with the likeness of the sensible object, and the intellect with the likeness of the thing understood. Therefore, if God is seen by the created in act, it must be that he is seen by some similitude. Reply to objection 3. The divine essence is existence itself. Hence, as other intelligible forms, which are not their own existence, are united to the intellect by means of some entity, whereby the intellect itself is informed and made in act, so the divine essence is united to the created intellect, as the object actually understood, making the intellect an act in act by and of itself. On the contrary, Augustine says that when the apostle says, quote, "When we see through a glass and in an enigma in a dark manner," end quote. By the terms glass and enigma, certain similitudes are signified by him, which are accommodated to the vision of glory, a vision of God. End quote. But to see the essence of God is not enigmatic, nor a speculative vision, but on the contrary, an opposite kind. Therefore, the divine essence is not seen through a similitude. I answer that. Two things are required, both for sensible and for intellectual vision, viz., power of sight and union of this thing with the sight, seen thing with the sight. For vision is made actually only when the thing seen is in a certain way in the seer. Now, in corporeal things, it is clear that the thing seen cannot be by its essence in the seer, but only by its likeness, as the similitude of a stone is in the eye, whereby the vision is made actual, whereas the substance of the stone is not there. But if the principle of the visual power and the thing seen were one and the same thing, it would necessarily follow that the seer would both receive the visual power and the form whereby it sees from that one same thing. Now, it is manifest that both God is the supreme author of intellect power, and that he can be seen by the intellect. And since the intellective power of creature is not the essence of God, it follows that it is some kind of participated likeness of him who is the first intellect. Hence, also the intellectual power of the creature is called an intelligible light, as it were derived from the first light, whether this be understood of natural power or of some perfection superadded by grace or of glory. Therefore, in order to see God, there must be some similitude of God on part of the visual faculty, whereby the intellect is made capable of seeing God. But on the part of the object seen, which must necessarily be united to the seer, the essence of God cannot be seen by any created similitude. First, because as Dionysius says, quote, "By the similitudes of the inferior order of things, the superior can in no way be known," end quote, as by the likeness of the body as the likeness of a body, the essence of an incorporeal thing cannot be known. Much less, therefore, can the essence of God be seen by any created likeness whatever. Secondly, because the essence of God is his own very existence, as was shown above, which cannot be said of any created form, and so no created form can be the similitude representing the divine essence to the seer. Thirdly, because the divine essence is uncircumscribed and contains in itself supereminently whatever can be signified or understood by the created intellect. Now, this cannot in any way be represented by the created likeness, for every created form is determined according to some aspect of wisdom, or of power, or of being itself, or of some like thing. Hence, to say that God is seen by some similitude is to say the divine essence is not seen at all, which is false. Therefore, it must be said that to see the essence of God, there is required some similitude in the visual faculty, namely the light of glory, strengthening the intellect to see God, which is spoken of in Psalm 30, verse 10, quote, "In thy light we shall see in thy light we shall see light," end quote. The essence of God, however, cannot be seen by any created similitude representing the divine essence itself, as it really is. Article 3. Whether the existence of God can be seen with the bodily eye. Objection 1. It seems that the existence of God can be seen by the corporeal eye, for it is written, I quote, "In my flesh I see God," end quote. Job 19:26, and, quote, "With the hearing of the ear I heard thee, but now my eye seeth thee," end quote. Job 42:5. Reply to objection 1. In the words, quote, "In my flesh I see God my Savior," end quote, do not mean that God will be seen with the eye of the flesh, but that man existing in the flesh after the resurrection will see God. Likewise, the words, "Now my eye seeth thee," are to be understood of the mind's eye, as the apostle says, quote, "May he give unto you the spirit of wisdom in the knowledge of him, that the eye of your heart may be enlightened," end quote. Ephesians 1, verses 17 and 18. Objection 2. Further, Augustine says, quote, "Those eyes, namely the glorified, will therefore have a greater power of sight, not so much to see more keenly, as some report the sight of serpents or eagles, or for whatever acuteness of vision is possessed by those creatures, they can see only corporeal things, but to even see incorporeal things," end quote. Now, whoever can see incorporeal things can be raised up to see God. Therefore, the glorified eyes can see God. Reply to objection 2. Augustine speaks as one inquiring conditionally. This appears to be from what he says previously. Quote, "Therefore they will have an altogether different power, the glorified eyes, if they shall see that the incorporeal nature," end quote. And afterwards he explained this, saying, quote, "It is very credible that we shall so see the mundane bodies of the new heaven and the new earth, as to see most clearly God everywhere present, governing all corporeal things, not as we now see the invisible things of God, as understood by what is made, but as when we see among men who living and exercising the functions of human life, we do not believe they live, but see it." End quote. Hence, it is evident how the glorified eyes will see God, as our now eyes in the light, as now our eyes see the life of another. But life is not seen with corporeal eyes as a thing in itself visible, but is the indirect object of the sense, which indeed is not known by sense, but at once, together with sense, by some other cognitive power. But that divine presence is known by the intellect immediately on the sight of and through corporeal things happens from two causes: from their perspicuity of the intellect, and from their effulgence of the divine glory infusing the body after its resurrection, after the renovation. Objection 3. Further, God can be further God can be seen by man through a vision of the imagination, for it is written, quote, "I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne," end quote. Isaiah 6:1. But an imaginary vision originates from some sense, for the imagination is moved by sense to act. Therefore, God can be seen by a vision of sense. Reply to objection 3. The essence of God is not seen in a vision of the imagination, but the imagination receives form representing God according to some mode of similitude. As in the divine scripture, divine things are metaphorically described by means of sensible things. On the contrary, Augustine says, quote, "No one has ever seen God either in this life, as he is, nor in the angelic life, as visible things are seen by corporeal vision." End quote. I answer that it is impossible for God to be seen by the sense of sight, or by any other sense, or faculty of sensitive power. For every such kind of power is the act of a corporeal organ, as will be shown later. Now, act is proportional to the nature which possesses it. Hence, no power of that kind can go beyond corporeal things, for God is incorporeal, as was shown above. Hence, he cannot be seen by the senses or by the imagination, but only by the intellect. Article 4. Whether any created intellect by its natural power can see the divine essence. It seems that a created intellect can see the divine essence by its own natural power. For Dionysius says, quote, "An angel is a pure mirror, most clear, receiving, if it is right to say so, the whole beauty of God." End quote. But if a reflection is seen, the original thing is seen. Therefore, since an angel, by his natural power of understanding himself, it seems that by his own natural power he understands the divine essence. Reply to objection 1. This mode of knowing God is natural to an angel, namely to know him by his own likeness, refugent in the angel himself. But to know God by any created similitude is not to know the essence of God, as was shown above. Hence, it does not follow that an angel can know the essence of God by his own power. Objection 2. Further, what is supremely visible is made less visible to us by reason of our defective corporeal or intellectual sight. But the angelic intellect has no such defect. Therefore, since God is supremely intelligible in himself, it seems that in the like manner he is supremely so as to an angel. Therefore, if he can understand other intelligible things by his own natural power, much more can he understand God. Reply to objection 2. The angelic intellect is not defective. If defective can be taken to mean privation, as if it were without anything which it ought to have. But if the defect be taken negatively, in the sense every other creature is defective when compared to God, forasmuch it does not possess the excellence which is in God. Objection 3. Further, corporeal sense cannot be raised up to understand incorporeal substance, which is above its nature. Therefore, if to see the essence of God is above the nature of every created intellect, it follows that no created intellect can reach up to the essence of God at all. But this is false, as appears from what is said above. Therefore, it seems that it is natural for a created intellect to see the divine essence. Reply to objection 3. The sense of sight, as being altogether material, cannot be raised up to immateriality. But our intellect, or the angelic intellect, inasmuch as it is elevated above matter in its own nature, can be raised up above its own nature to a higher level by grace. The proof is that sight cannot in any way know abstractly what it knows concretely. For in no way can it perceive a nature except by this one particular nature, whereas our intellect is able to consider abstractly what it knows concretely. Now, although it knows things which have a form residing in matter, still it resolves the composite into both of these elements, and it considers the form separately by itself. Likewise, also the intellect of an angel, although it naturally knows the concrete in any nature, still it is able to separate that existence by its intellect, since it knows that the thing itself is one thing, and that existence is another. Since therefore the created intellect is naturally capable of apprehending the concrete form, and the concrete being abstractly, by way of a resolution of the parts, it can by grace be raised up to know separate things subsisting substance, and separate subsisting essence. On the contrary, it is written, "The grace of God is everlasting life." Romans 6:23. But everlasting life consists in the vision of the divine essence, according to the words, quote, "This is eternal life, that they may know the only true God. End quote. John 17:3. Therefore, to see the essence of God is possible to the created intellect by grace, and not by nature. I answer that. It is impossible for any created intellect to see the essence of God by its own natural power. For knowledge is regulated according as the thing known is in the knower, but the thing known is in the knower according to the mode of the knower. Hence the knowledge of every knower is ruled according to its own nature. If therefore the mode of anything being exceeds the mode of the knower, it must result that the knowledge of the object is above the nature of the knower. Now, the mode of being of things is manifold, for some things have being only in this one individual matter, as all bodies. But others are subsisting natures, not residing in matter at all, which however not their own existence, but receive it. And these things are incorporeal beings called angels. But to God alone does it not but to God alone does it belong to him all own subsisting being. But to God alone does it belong to be his own subsisting being. Therefore, whatever exists only in individual matter, we know naturally, forasmuch as our soul, whereby we know, is the form of certain matter. Now, our soul possesses two cognitive powers. One is the act of a corporeal organ, which naturally knows things existing in individual matter, hence, since knows only the singular. But there is another kind of cognitive power in the soul called the intellect. And this is not the act of any corporeal organ. Wherefore, the intellect naturally knows natures which exist only in individual matters, not as they are in such individual matter, but according as they are abstracted therefore by the considering act of the intellect. Hence it follows that through the intellect we can understand these objects as universal, and this is beyond the power of the sense. Now, the angelic intellect naturally knows natures that are not in the matter, but this is beyond the power of the intellect of our soul in the state of its present life, united as it were to the body. It follows, therefore, that to know self-subsistent being is natural to divine intellect alone, and that this is beyond the natural power of any created intellect, for no creature is its own existence, for as much as its existence is participated. Therefore, the created intellect cannot see the essence of God, unless by his grace unites himself to the created intellect, as an object made intelligible to it. Article 5. Whether the created intellect needs any created light in order to see the essence of God. It seems that the created intellect does not need any created light in order to see the essence of God, for what of itself lucid and sensible things does not require any other light in order to be seen. Therefore, the same applies to intelligible things. Now, God is intelligible light. Therefore, he is not seen by means of any other created light. Reply to objection 1. The created light is necessary to see the essence of God, not in order to make the essence of God intelligible, for which is of itself intelligible, but in order to enable the intellect to understand in the same way as a habit makes a power able to act. Even so, corporeal light is necessary as regards external sight, inasmuch as it makes the medium actually transparent and susceptible for color. Objection 2. Further, if God is seen through a medium, he is not seen in his essence. But if seen by any created light, he is seen through a medium. Therefore, he is not seen in his essence. Reply to objection 2. This light is required to see the divine essence, not as a similitude in which God is seen, but as a perfection of the intellect, strengthening it to see God. Therefore, it may be said that this light is to be described not as a medium in which God is seen, but as one by which he is seen, as a medium does not take away the immediate vision of God. Objection 3. Further, what is created can be natural to some creature. Therefore, if the essence of God is seen through any created light, such a light can be made natural to some other creature, and thus that creature would not need any other light to see God, which is impossible. Therefore, it is not necessary that every creature should require a superadded light in order to see the essence of God. Reply to objection 3. The disposition of form of fire can be natural only to the subject of that form. Hence, the light of glory cannot be natural to a creature unless that creature has a divine nature, which is impossible. But by this light, the rational creature is made deiform, as is said in this article. On the contrary, it is written, "In thy light we shall see light." Psalm 35:10. I answer that. Everything is raised up to what exceeds its nature. Everything which is raised up to what exceeds its nature must be prepared by some disposition above its nature. As, for example, if air is to receive the form of fire, it must be prepared by some disposition for such a form. But when any created intellect sees the essence of God itself becomes intelligible form of intellect. Hence, it is necessary that some supernatural disposition should be added to the power of intellect, in order that it may be raised up to such a great and sublime height. Now, since the natural power of the created intellect does not avail to enable it to see the essence of God, as was shown in the preceding article, it is necessary that the power of understanding should be added by divine grace. Now, this increase of the intellectual powers is called the illumination of the intellect, as we also call the intelligible object itself by the name of light of illumination. As this is the light spoken of in the Apocalypse, Apocalypse 21:23, quote, "The glory of God hath enlightened it," end quote. The society of the blessed who see God. Or that rather is as, i.e., the society of the blessed who see God. By this light, the blessed are made, quote, deiform, end quote, i.e., like to God, according to it, the saying, quote, "When he shall appear, we shall be like to him, and because we shall see him as he is," end quote. 1 John 3:2. Well, all right. We'll continue tomorrow on Article 6. Whether of those who see the essence of God, one sees more perfectly than another. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this today, really going in to the Summa, and tomorrow we'll be back for another. That'll be day 8. So, if you found this helpful in any sense, I hope that you would feel motivated to share with another. I don't think I've told this before, but this show is across YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So yeah, under the same name, hopefully. All right, have a blessed day, and I will see you tomorrow.